Hey everyone, thanks for the 10 of you who are around. So I'm an assistant professor in the School of Computer Science at Virginia Tech, and so this work is with my amazing students. This is part of a larger thread of work where we are trying to measure misinformation and conspiracy theories that are surfaced by algorithmic search platforms. And this one specifically looks at finding misinformation on video search platform. That is, in our case, we looked at YouTube. So nowadays, it is fairly common to see headlines like this, how YouTube is driving people to the darkest corners of the internet, how Google is directing people to extreme content, and then you see these op-ed that YouTube is a great radicalizer. Right? And then you also see YouTube responding by saying they're reducing conspiracy theory recommendations or that they are making conspiracy videos really hard to find. But all these reports and responses, all of these are fairly anecdotal. That is, there is not enough hard empirical statistical evidence to prove any of these anecdotal stories and also to disprove any of these counter responses. So that is what the goal of our study was, in order to verify some of these anecdotal claims criticizing YouTube for surfacing problematic content on its platform. So the question is, does YouTube's search and recommendation algorithm really surfaces these problematic content? And then what are the conditions under which it does that? And so the way we did it is by conducting systematic audits on YouTube's algorithm, and we picked one type of problematic content, that is conspiracy theories. So these are the questions that our work answered, so very specific, unlike some of the other studies presented this morning, not that broad. But the first question was looked at this question of, does the user's demographics, let's say their age or gender, and the location from which they are querying the search engine, YouTube search, video search platform, does that have an effect on the amount of misinformation that YouTube search and recommendation algorithm is returning? The next question is the question of watch history. So what happens when the user has watched some videos, let's say all pro conspiracy video or all debunking or all neutral videos? What happens under those scenarios? Does the platform return more or less misinformation? And then the final piece here is there any difference across the topics? That is, what happens if it's user is searching for vaccine versus flat earth? Is there a difference in the amount of misinformation returned? So this is our entire audit framework, and so I'm going to briefly go into each of these steps. So the first, we started with selecting search topics. And our goal here was to make sure that the topics that we are auditing are these high-impact misinformation search topics. And so that is, lots of people have searched from them, and so it has a high impact, impacting several people. And that these topics should also have some definitive false value, right? And so how do we determine that? So we went with Wikipedia, and then Wikipedia's list of conspiracy theories is a human-curated list of definite false conspiracy theories. So that was our starting point. And then to figure out whether some of these theories have been affecting lots of people, that whether they're perennial, whether they're popular or not, we went with Google Trends. And so Google Trends, we fed these, let's say you feed 9/11 conspiracy theories, you fix United States, so we are only concerned about what happens in the US. And then we looked at 2 years time span, 2016 to 2018, and then YouTube as our search service of choice. And then we looked at whether there are some form of trend in the data. So here, of course, you see 9/11 searches going up during the September timeline, but overall, people are consistently searching for this topic for 2 years. We saw the same thing for some other theories, like the moon landing conspiracy theories. You see these consistent trend lines. So doing this, combining Wikipedia's data and the Google Trends trend analysis, we came up with 5 topics for our audit analysis. This was 9/11 conspiracy theories, the vaccine conspiracy theories, moon landing, chemtrail conspiracy theories, and flat earth. Our next step was to select search queries that represent these topics, these misinformative topics. And for that, we used 2 different sources of data. The first was YouTube's auto-suggestions. So you feed YouTube with some seed query representing that topic, and then collect the top 10 suggestions that the platform provides. This kind of tells us that we are focusing on the trending search queries that's happening in YouTube at that time. And then we also went with Google Trends, and then also collected for that topic, what are the related queries that people have searched. So again, high impact perennial queries. right? So combining both of them formed our set of search queries for a particular topic that we then used for conducting our audits, right? So we were finally ready to launch our audits with these two parameters in place. And so our audits essentially comprised of two sets of experiments. First was a search audit experiment. This was for auditing their search algorithm. And here the audits were conducted with brand new Google or YouTube accounts. That is, these accounts were emulating how real people would be searching the platform. And then the watch audits were conducted with accounts that had already built some form of watch history by watching conspiratorial videos of certain stands, right? And then we audited 3 different components of YouTube. The search results component, this was for auditing their search algorithm. And for recommendations, we audited the YouTube and the top 5 recommendation algorithm. So coming back to our first research question, does age and gender and geolocation have any effect? So for doing this sort of audits, we focused on 4 different age groups. Then the gender was male, female. And in order to do this, we created different accounts which emulated these different personas, right? So age or male or female. And then for geolocation, we found what are the hot and the cold locations, right? So what do I mean by that? These are the regions which have the highest, so hot, or the lowest, or low interest in a particular topic, right? So, and we found these hot and cold locations by using these Google's interest over time graph. So the darker locations are these hot regions, lots of interest, and the lighter are these cold regions, less interest for that topic. So this is how it looks for all the topics here. So if you look at flat Earth, some of the hot regions that we selected was Montana, cold region, New Jersey, and so on, right? And so once we had these regions defined, then we created bots to fire these queries from IP addresses from these locations. That's how we are conducting our audits. So this is a little more detail into our search audit experiment. Lots of text over there, but essentially this is how our Selenium, we created our scripted Selenium bots, which behave like normal users, logged into YouTube, search like normal users, and then on the back end there were scripts which were collecting the results that the search platform was returning. For the watch experiments, slightly different. So these were, while in the previous one, these were really brand new accounts with no history, they were searching. But for watch experiments, these accounts had already built their watch history. So either by watching promoting videos, debunking, or neutral. And we purposely made it a little more conservative here. We made the accounts, some of the accounts watch all promoting videos, some watch all debunking, and then some watch all neutral. And they watch 20 videos before building up their watch history. And then it was essentially the same similar Selenium bot design. It acted like a real user, fired up the query, and our platform or our scripts were collecting what kind of search results the platform was giving, and then what kind of recommendations the YouTube platform was giving. We also control for noise. So this was really important because you might say that, okay, the results that you're seeing is because of certain noise. Maybe the 2 different accounts use different browsers or different kind of times when they were sending out those queries. So your results are affected by these noise. So we made sure that we control for all these noise variables. So all the accounts were firing queries at the same time. So controlling for the temporal effects. They were all using Firefox. This was, again, selected on purpose so that we can avoid the possibility that Chrome browser would be tracking these Google accounts that we are using in our experiment. All the searches were done in incognito mode, and they were all using the same sort of operating systems, so the same infrastructure. Right? So once we had this entire audit set up, it ran for several days, and then we collected our data and annotated it. So we had overall, for this audit, collected 56,000 videos, about 3,000 of them were unique videos. And then we manually annotated these videos as either promoting conspiracies or they were neutral, like just talking about the, say 9/11, like reporting about it, but not really talking about any conspiracy. And then they were debunking some of these conspiracy theories, right? So that's how we annotated. And then we did some statistical comparison tests on this annotated data, right? So skipping the statistical tests that we did, but you all might be wondering, what's the result of these audits? That's what drove this study in the first place. So let's look at the first research question. So does demographics, age and gender, and does geolocation have any effect on the amount of misinformation returned? So first, good news or bad news, how you want to take this. But first thing we found that for search audit, that's when someone is a brand new account, brand new Google account, there is no significant effect of demographics and geolocation. It doesn't matter what age, what gender they belong, where their geolocation is. It doesn't matter. They are going to get same type of information. So there is no significant difference, right? So this sort of disproves some of the initial evidence that these anecdotal stories had said earlier, right? But things start getting interesting when we add watch history to it, right? So for the watch edit experiment, we found out, yes, there are in fact significant effects for certain combinations of what kind of videos the accounts are watching, and then what type of algorithm that we are auditing. So I'm going to give you a quick preview of some of the results. Among all the cases that we found, one overall theme was men were really, so accounts whose gender was set as male, they were recommended more misinformative videos. And then men who were watching neutral videos, they also ended up with higher recommendation for pro-conspiracy or misinformative videos. So and this was happening for especially those two rows that are marked here, the flat earth and the vaccine conspiracy videos. And I think this result is really concerning because these were users who were drawn to neutral information, that is, they were watching neutral videos and had not yet developed any sort of strong pro-conspiracy belief, yet the algorithm, the video, YouTube's top 5 recommendation algorithm, I can't really see the timer. Oh, 11 minutes left, or 11 minutes. Okay, all right. And so, right, so which means that it might increase these sort of recommendations might increase their chances of forming pro-conspiracy beliefs. All right, so the next question was, does watch history, watching pro-debunking neutral videos have any effect? Perhaps something which would be most interesting for this audience is related to health misinformation. So we found that watching promoting anti-vaccine videos actually resulted in receiving more promoting anti-vaccine videos in the search results, right? So compared to those who watch neutral and debunking. And this aligns with some of those stories that we have heard before. But wait for the interesting bit in the next part. So what happens for the top 5 and the up next recommended videos, right? So what happens for the recommender algorithm? There we found an opposite effect. That is, accounts that watched promoting anti-vaccine videos got recommended more debunking videos, right? So it essentially says that YouTube has gone and changed their recommender algorithm, but not the search algorithm. And then we looked at another topic like chemtrails. So this one actually we found the opposite effect, where accounts that watched videos promoting chemtrails, they got recommended more promoting videos. So this tells that YouTube, while they have fixed vaccine controversies, they have not really fixed chemtrails conspiracy video, right? So it's essentially the third question sort of I already answered. Is there any difference across topics? Again, chemtrail is a leader in terms of significantly more misinformative search results compared to all the other topics. Same scenario for the watch experiment as well. For 9/11 conspiracy, also we found there are significantly more misinformation in the up next as well as the top 5 recommendations compared to all the other topics. All right, so wrapping up here, so what are the takeaway and contributions of this work? So through this work, we were able to develop a methodology to audit search engines for misinformation, and hopefully this method can be adopted for future audits for other platforms as well. And then we were one of the first ones to kind of do the systematic investigation of the effect of personalization attributes. So by personalization, I mean, what's the gender, age, and the watch history? Do they have any real effect on the way, in the way the algorithm or the video search platform is recommending content? And our study also identified these vulnerable populations. For example, in our case, we found men who were watching neutral flat earth videos were recommended more pro-conspiracy videos. So we kind of, these audits could also be a mechanism for finding vulnerable populations who could be targets for these misinformative topics. And then we were also statistically able to prove how YouTube's behavior changes across different misinformative topics. Right? So what are the implications of this finding, right? So this kind of tells that YouTube's mechanism for handling misinformation is more reactive than proactive. So they are reacting and handpicking topics which have come under the highlighted by media and popular press, and their strategy is much more reactive, right? They are going to fix vaccine controversies, but not really chemtrails or 9/11 or other controversies which have not been talked about by technology critics and media reports. And then even for vaccine controversies, it's more nuanced than that, right? So we found that YouTube, while it recommends debunking videos when someone is searching for anti-vaccine, the same thing doesn't happen for its search algorithm. There is a filter bubble which exists in its search results. Person who is searching, a brand new account searching for anti-vaccine videos are going to get search results that are anti-vaccine in the first place. So finally, to conclude, what I started with, YouTube's claims to reduce conspiracy theory recommendations, it turns out they still have a long way to go before they can claim they have actually mitigated the problem of misinformation and conspiracy on their platform. That's it. Thank you. And a dot at 15 minutes. And those are all the questions that I answered. And I'm happy to take any more questions from the audience if there is time. Or not. Yeah.
I'm wondering, do you have any thoughts on what the potential for stopping radicalization is for your work? So you can easily imagine someone goes there, isn't yet polarized on the vaccine issue, and essentially falls down the rabbit hole. Have you done any work, or do you know of any work to try to measure that end kind of state of how often that happens?
So I think there was a paper a couple of months ago, which was also bashed by several academics that the paper doesn't have a good statistical significance, or like it's not done in the rigorous way. So that's there. But I think with this kind of audit method, you could set up an experiment to test exactly what you're trying to say, of course, with artificial accounts, right? So this doesn't, again, there's a caveat here. You're not measuring real user behavior. Like, it's really hard to claim that a user is only going to search 20 pro-conspiracy videos before they search the next video on any topic, right? But in order to have, at least in a very conservative world, you can make these measurements by setting these conditions. Yeah. All right. Yeah.
Is there any way to do this with algorithm? I mean, get access to their algorithm for what's popping up on next? Because it seems like it's a sort of, that's the other end of doing this project, is to try to figure out what's motivating the, obviously it must be something to do with what they've already clicked on.
Right, so accessing YouTube's or Facebook's algorithm to figure how it's behaving. So that's a good question. So we probably have a few people in the audience from the industry. So I think in their defense, even they don't know how the algorithm always works with the data of the person, right? The data of the user. So even if you were to be given the source code of the algorithm and you try to go through it, you can only answer so many questions. But there is this factor of users' data along with it, which adds this additional complexity, which I think you could only measure through audits. But correct me from the audience if anybody's from YouTube or Facebook, if I'm miscoding that fact. Yeah. Yeah. So he's nodding his head, so I'll take that as a yes. All right. Yeah. Sure. Yeah, the popularity was one thing we measured, and I don't have the results. I didn't show the results, but yes, popularity, like number of likes, comments, upvote, all of those did have an effect. Yeah, but happy to chat more about that later. Yeah. Thank you.